speaking of getting off of Twitter, Twitter have given you yet another good reason to not use their platform and instead to use one of the alternatives like Getter, Gab, Truth Social, anything else that operates like Twitter, but not Twitter. And that's because Twitter has created a pre-crime division in their terms of service. They will now be they have a portion of Twitter that is committed to pre-bunking narratives.
Is this their new terms of service?
It is indeed their new terms of service. And I thought we'd talk about it because, of course, this is only going to operate in one direction. If you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go and watch our premium podcast about repressive tolerance, Herbert Marcuse's famous essay that set the stage for them being able to justify any amount of censorship as long as it was against the right. And this rescinding of tolerance is exactly how we've arrived at this point.
Well, it's a pressure cooker to directly incite violence. And so at this point, I think it's a sabotage effort to revoke our one tool of conflict resolution, which is language, in order to bring about a civil strife, which could end the Republic, and it's just they're so sure they're going to win.
Yeah, well, his justification was essentially the right wing is not going to bring about communism, and so everything about the right wing we have to rescind tolerance from them. So we don't tolerate the things that we would tolerate about the left. And of course, that is deeply unfair. Like any normal person is going to look at that and say, so that person can do X, but that person can't do X, and the reason is simply because of the way that they vote politically. It's like, that's just not fair. It's not cricket. You can't run a democracy or a republic like this. And this is why everything is going to hell in a handbasket, frankly. But anyway, let's go and have a look at Twitter's blog, because of course the midterms are coming up, and man, you know that's going to be fair and honest. The integrity of the 2022 midterms is beyond reproach, says Twitter, which really makes me think. They say, we aim to enable healthy civic conversation on Twitter.
The chimpanzee poo slinging cage of the internet needs to be. God Almighty!
Have you guys ever used Twitter? That's just not what it's for.
It's just verbal warfare.
Exactly.
It's just the outlet to be the nastiest version of yourself possible for clicks.
Yeah, it's just you incentivize the absolute opposite of that. So it's remarkable that you would have the gall to write that. But that was their opening sort of
salvo.
Yeah. So we aim to enable healthy civic conversation on Twitter while ensuring people have the context they need to make informed decisions about the content they encounter. Because we're a global service, there's almost always an election happening on Twitter. So that again, like, look at the framing, right? There's almost always an election happening on Twitter. Twitter is the important platform where the decision makers gather to be informed about the decisions they should be making. And that's not wrong either. Right, that's what Elon Musk is observing.
The strange thing is, though, if they're saying that we're a global platform and elections are always happening in some time in some place on our platform and discourse is, are they therefore conceding that all elections are beyond reproach? Because there are clearly some elections that are incredibly corrupt. Obviously not in America, YouTube. In places like the Third World, where votes are rigged, and of course people are subjugated, and we sympathize with those people. But Twitter seems to be glossing over human rights violations in developing nations. That's evil.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because Twitter are actually have taken upon themselves to be the arbiter of when it is and is not a fair election, you see. And so, but again, I just love the framing here. There's almost always an election happening on Twitter. I suppose if like every politician is using your platform and every journalist is using your platform, and this is where like their narratives are crafted to be filtered down to the main public, the majority public, then they would see themselves as essentially the kind of, elite council room of politics. And that's what that phrase means. But anyway, they say, today we're announcing steps ahead of the US midterms to protect civic conversation on Twitter. Brilliant. I love having my conversation fortified by the powers that be. Today, as we do ahead of other global elections, we're activating our enforcement of civic integrity policy for the 2022 US midterms. The civic integrity policy covers the most common types of harmful, misleading information about elections and civic events, such as claims about how to participate in a civic process like how to vote, misleading content intended to intimidate or dissuade people from participating in an election, and this is the important part, misleading claims intended to undermine public confidence in an election, including false information about the outcome of the election.
So Al Gore is going to be banned.
I guess we'll get into who's going to be banned and who's not going to be banned.
Okay, I won't presage that.
Again, going back to the Repressive Tolerance podcast.
I guarantee someone is going to be banned, whether it's Posobiec, etc., on the day by saying, "Oh, Democrats, don't worry, voting starts next week." The old joke of my other side, don't worry, your vote starts tomorrow. They're going to take that out of context and ban someone.
Well, I mean, that's literally the first thing.
Yeah.
Or the second thing, sorry, misleading content to dissuade people from participating in the election or how to vote. Yeah, the old joke is going to be bannable, frankly.
So is saying only alive people should vote.
Well, yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like false information about the outcome of the election. So Twitter has decided that you can't, if in advance of the outcome of the election, you post what they view to be false information about the outcome of the election, well, that could be a bannable offense.
What if you accidentally call a state earlier, like the Young Turks did in 2016 live stream? You're going to be banned retroactively when the
Assuming
votes change?
you got it wrong, it would be justified. It'd be hard to not justify it. But they say that tweets with this content may be labeled with links to credible information or helpful context, and Twitter will not recommend or amplify this content in areas of the product where Twitter makes recommendations. Right, so this is kind of like the pre-crime division. And of course, they will know that what you've tweeted is not credible because Twitter is a source of unlimited information. They have credible information, and I don't know why they don't just put up a Wikipedia page or something. This is the credible information. This is the narrative. There's no point questioning it. But why even permit any kind of political discussion or debate or information sharing on Twitter if they already know what the right answers are? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? They say, late last year, we tested new misleading information labels and saw promising results. The new labels increased click-through rates by 17%, meaning that more people were clicking labels to read debunking content.
No, they clicked it because they wanted to know exactly what nonsense
What was the
you'd
lie?
attached it.
Yeah. A lot. I think that for the skeptical side, should we say, that's probably what was happening. We also saw notable decreases in engagement with tweets labeled with the new design. Minus 13% in replies, minus 10% in retweets, and minus 15% in likes.
So when we algorithmically deranked you, we found out you had less engagement.
Yeah.
Shock.
And when we put up this warning label and make it so that, and this is just the effect of having to click more than once. Like any software developer will tell you, have whatever you want the people to reach, do the minimum number of clicks, because people just get bored of clicking and just go do something else.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered to click that. I'm just going to move on. And so there we go. But anyway, then they get to their pre-bunks, which I think is this is the really interesting bit. In the lead up to election day, we shall share prompts with information about how and where to vote directly to people's timelines. Great. I love that Twitter's going to show me what to do. But we're also bringing back pre-bunks in English, Spanish, and other languages supported on Twitter to get ahead of misleading narratives on Twitter and to proactively address topics that may be the subject of misinformation.
Can I just say, the fact they said English, Spanish means this is a concession that despite them saying, we're a global platform, all of our elections happen around the world, directly targeting the US.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And directly targeting like states like Texas.
Yes.
We have a large...
Arizona.
Where you have, in Florida, we have large Spanish-speaking populations that may not want to vote Democrat.
No.
They may have their skepticism about that party themselves. But isn't this just the worst? This is what was the film? What was the film with the... I can't even remember. Minority Report.
Yeah.
That's
Minority Report.
Minority Report. This is literally what Twitter is claiming to have access to, is futuristic information on what is a misleading narrative.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're going to appeal to the experts, it's like, okay, well, what about the CDC or the World Health Organization's perspective on masks and COVID? I mean, this has been all over the shop for the entire time. So it's not like you can say, well, they just look at the World Health Organization. They were right. Well, they've changed. Fauci has been on every side of every issue of the COVID pandemic since day one. I mean, what you are not like the fonts of truth, except that's not how the Democrats work. This is why the problem with redefinition is coming about. They have decided that basically everything we say is true. Everything you say is either what we say or it is false. And that's what this means. You can't get ahead of misleading narratives if you don't already know what the truth is. And if you do already know what the truth is, that means you are setting the agenda and lying about what's really happening. That's it. And this, again, to say this just shows you, if you had any doubt that the system was rigged against the Republicans and in favor of the Democrats, that doubt must be abolished by now. That doubt must be gone.
It's gone beyond hubris. This is now hegemonic.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great word. That this is hegemonic, right? That is just, and they're just saying it to you. They're just saying, no, we're going to pre-bunk. We're going to tell you what the narrative will be that you're allowed to follow on Twitter. And I can tell you what it's going to be. The narrative is that actually Joe Biden won, the Democrats won in a landslide election.
Yeah, more black votes than Obama in Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. More votes than anyone ever. Most popular party in the world. Don't know why you're questioning this. And when people are sharing videos of things that are happening in real time, well, if that goes against the pre-bunk, we already know what's going to happen.
It doesn't even reach our dashboards in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pre-screened. It reminds me, you've brought up Minority Report, but basically Twitter has become S.H.I.E.L.D. from, and I hate the Marvel movies, but from Captain America Winter Soldier. They are a massive, now government-partnered apparatus with all of the aircraft carriers in the hangar ready to go. And they've been captured by, I forgot who the director's name is. He's played by Robert Redford, ironically, who is meant to be the president in the alternate Watchmen universe as well. Clearly a Democrat. And they're going to pre-screen people who are likely to commit crimes and therefore have these little drones following them around all the time.
Really?
Yeah, you've got this in your pocket just saying to you, okay, you're likely to access election misinformation. Therefore, we're just going to pre-filter your feed so that you subscribe to the current thing.
That is exactly it. And they're going to have these in state-specific event hubs. So this is going to be...
Which states?
Well, it's not going to be in California, is it?
Well, it might be actually, because of course, so California, the interesting thing about it is it's been reported by Democrat outlets that they have had so many illegal immigrants, it's actually given them an extra vote in the, what's the Electoral College.
Yeah.
So just by the raw population expansion of non-documented people, they now have more electoral power.
But I mean, the need for filtering is what I mean. It's not going to be need for filtering in California because that's already decided. But and they say, well, we take our role seriously. Twitter plays a critical role in empowering democratic conversations. Yeah, how could democracy ever have happened before Twitter? Facilitating meaningful political debate, which again, just remarkable they have the gall to say this.
Yeah, when it's most famous for Donald Trump calling Stormy Daniels horseface.
And providing information on civic participation, not only in the US but around the world. People deserve to trust the election conversations and content they encounter on Twitter. Well, you can trust it to be Democrat propaganda.
Yeah.
That's what you can trust it to be. And you're going to want to use Getter, Gab, or Truth Social to see what the Republican side of that conversation is going to be, because it's just not going to be available on Twitter. That's what Twitter is saying to you with this terms of service. And again, let's go to an actual tweet that they posted about this. It's the bit about misleading claims. I mean, you can see the ratio on that, 12,000 quote tweets. People are like, hang on a second. And so, people were replying to this with just, for example, go to the next one, 10 minutes of Democrats claiming that the 2016 election was stolen. And it's every major Democrat. As you see, it's Hillary Clinton here.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, so Twitter, if election integrity is something that you guys are concerned about, what you must be saying by allowing this to go around and to have no problem, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all of these people, what you're saying is you think the 2016 election was stolen. That must be what you think. Or it's that the rule only applies to Republicans.
Well, if you're to be charitable, I'm sure as well their vaccine misinformation policy, which Vijaya Gad and Jack Dorsey told Tim Pool on the Joe Rogan podcast they would never implement when COVID came in, was clearly to curb the Democrats spreading vaccine misinformation. Because remember, they said they wouldn't take a Trump vaccine.
That's a great point.
So clearly, again, it's either you're applying the standard consistently or it only flows in one direction.
Yep. But this, again, it's complete repressive tolerance. I mean, go to the next one. You got Nancy Pelosi here. This tweet from 2017, still up. Twitter doesn't care because it's Nancy Pelosi. That's why. Our election was hijacked. I mean, you couldn't get a more extreme statement than that. And of course, she means by Russia, which the Russia investigation turned out to be absolutely nothing.
And funded by the opposition.
And funded by the opposition. And an obvious way to try and down Trump's presidency rather than actually engage with the fact that he actually seems to have legitimately won. I mean, I don't really think that Trump had the means to hijack the election.
Also, when he's threatening to nuke Moscow, I don't think they're much of an ally.
Yeah, strange, yeah. But again, if this is okay, then either you believe that Trump hijacked the election or the rule doesn't apply to Nancy Pelosi. Or you've got the White House press secretary, the diversity hire. Reminder, Brian Kemp stole the gubernatorial election from the Georgians and Stacey Abrams.
No way, 2 years before employment as well.
Yeah. They just all say it. Yeah, this was from 2 years ago. They were saying that these elections were stolen for ages.
Yeah.
And Twitter's like, yeah, but there's one election you can't say was stolen. But anyway, as you can see, this is just going to be used as a partisan tool to further cement the hegemonic power of the Democrats across social media. Be aware that when you post, I have doubts about this, voting area. I have doubts that in Chicago, they've boarded up all the walls and all the windows and won't let the Republican poll watchers in. I have slight doubts there. No, banned from Twitter, banned from everywhere. Probably banned from YouTube at some point. Like, just be aware you're going to have to use alternate social media. So go and follow everyone you like on Gab, Getter, Truth Social, everywhere else. Just follow them. You have to do it.
Can I quickly chime in with a potential white pill?
Yeah, please.
So even though this looks like they're outsourcing Nina Jankowicz's disinformation department to Silicon Valley, which we know they did during the pandemic because they got up with the Surgeon General saying we're going to remove vaccine misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation there being the key word because that's actually a classification of interstate warfare propaganda. I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Berenstein, the guy who recently...
I'm aware of the name, but I don't know.
He was banned and recently did a lawsuit to get himself back on Twitter.
That's how I know him.
And settled to get back on Twitter. However, his lawyers have indicated that they may have seen something to do with the US government interfering and directing who to ban Twitter specifically. And Naomi Wolf, of all people, was on Tim Pool's show the other night and said, I am actively pursuing lawsuit as well because I have proof that the government, specifically for my vaccine views, told them to ban me from Twitter. So if these lawsuits materialize and they don't just settle out to get back on Twitter, we may uncover some actual government interference which could be acted on, say, if a Trump's third term materialized over the horizon.
I always knew the US government was behind me getting banned from Twitter.
Thanks for watching this segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can subscribe to become a premium member and access all of our exclusive content, including this Premium Contemplations, where Connor and Josh talk about the manosphere and their disastrous dating advice. If you're interested in following Josh on social media, you can find him on Getter at Josh_firm. Thank you and goodbye.